Hi, Lynette Holloway, News One senior editor here today with Kwame Jackson, News One contributor and a former contestant on The Apprentice, and Elmani Vani, a youth advocate who these men are both, wait for it, Kappas. And we are here today to talk about Colin Kaepernick.
Who's also a Kappa.
Who's also a Kappa. Now, the question is, and then we're going to open with this, and Kwame's going to talk about it a little bit, is he being blackballed?
I think it's pretty obvious. I wrote an op-ed on Colin Kaepernick and really talked about the status of his employment with the NFL, but really in regards to what fans are going to choose to do about it from an economic dislocation point. Are we going to choose to boycott? Are we going to choose to organize something formally? Are we going to do something informally and just not buy as much product or attend as many games? But I think it's pretty obvious what's happening. We know that his talent is not Tom Brady level, and nobody is, but his talent is also not at the bottom of the spectrum. So if he was competing for a minimum backup quarterback job, I call it kind of professional malfeasance or sports malfeasance to not consider him for at least a backup job, because he outpaces most of those guys in the middle. So because of his political leanings, I think there's a lot of conversation that tries to cover up why he's being blackballed, but it's pretty obvious he's being blackballed.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're in a time where these dynamics are very complex, especially when you talk about the issue of race, right? And it always has been. So everybody understands that. But when you look at this in terms of from the kneeling, and then you combine that with those that may say, hey, that's unpatriotic, to also those that look at, and this is important, that maybe looks at the American flag as sort of kind of this cultural identity to white America.
Right.
Then that becomes like you're threatening that to that segment. Now there are those that say, hey, you're disrespecting the flag, and those who fall for freedom. There are those who maybe are not racist but are actually good military people, and those see that, and so there's that sensitivity there. When you get into the fan aspect, yes, you do have those that are really against him for leading that, but I think it's because also the exposure when we talk about it, and I think we've gotten away from the context of his kneeling, which was against police brutality, and the killing, the unlawful killing of black men here in America, and so I think there's that taboo that they say, wow, if we maybe just saying, if we accept them, if we don't push back, then we're acknowledging that these issues do exist.
Absolutely. And I want to add one thing that Kwame made a point in his article. It's almost like he is the runaway slave, and then the master's like, oh, we can't bring him back.
Yeah, I use the Nat Turner analogy, which is, it's one thing to run away from the plantation, it's another thing to go back and try to recruit others, like Harriet Tubman, and to kind of spread that virus among people to be a free thought or an independent person. And I think that's what Kaepernick's being punished for, and Kaepernick is being punished specifically by the NFL ownership group to send a message to other possible future Kaepernicks that might be in the league. And so I think that's just as dangerous, because you're putting a muzzle on somebody on their political right, First Amendment right to protest, to assemble, and to state your grievances. And this person, is doing nothing more than what the NFL has already tried to accept, which is, DUIs and hard drug use and domestic abuse and gun and, illegal gun ownership. Yeah. All those things are put to the side. But when someone speaks out on behalf of Black America, they try to confuse the two with patriotism.
And I think on that, it's interesting that you raised that, and you raised the issues that both the NFL, but fans, and in some places the broader community is accepting of, right? And I think we have to ask that question, why? And I tend to wonder, is it because they are comfortable with that stereotypical imagery of African Americans? Meaning, we have always been, if you go back to, the movie Birth of a Nation, in the early 1900s, that was the first real media imagery of African Americans in a very criminal type of a way. So when you see this and say accepting, is it because we're accepting because there's this subconscious feeling that, well, that's what a certain segment of America still thinks of African Americans? Let's be honest. In certain places, no matter who we are, if you and I go walking down a block at late at night, somebody may clutch their purse.
Yeah,
Right.
You know, and I think
happens.
that's a piece of it, Elmani, that you touch on. But I also think it has to do with sports and entertainment culture, which is if you win, everything is forgotten.
Gotcha.
And so that's
Yeah.
the argument against Kaepernick, which I'm not denying, which is obviously his performance is an A+++.
Right.
So people say if he was just a pure winner, then no matter what, they'd allow him to speak. But I don't know. I tend to disagree with that as well.
Not just the NFL, but even in the past with the NBA. If you think of I'm going to pronounce his name, Ralph Mahmoud. If you think about what he had done, because really Kaepernick wasn't the first.
Nope.
If you go back to Ralph Mahmoud, I mean, of course, then you go back to Muhammad
Ali, and Ali was a winner.
And
Ali was a winner.
Ali was a winner. and even when you go back to John Carlos and Tommy Smith,
who were winners.
And the only reason why maybe they didn't get blackballed as much is because of the fact that the Olympics is a 4-year. Is a 4-year, space in between, but had it been more consistent year after year, who knows?
And they never accepted their medals.
Right.
The U.S. still tried to give them their medals, but I think that maybe there is something if you look at that lineage of people who spoke out specifically against the abuse of Black America,
right.
that is still the third rail.
Right.
That no matter, even if you win, that doesn't make up for all the other
rail.
things that we talked about. It's still the third rail in America. It's like, how dare you get out of line and speak on that matter?
Exactly.
Absolutely. So let's kind of move to, you all attended the conclave this week?
Yes, the Kappa Conclave.
So let's talk about that. What were some of the voices there? Do they, is it all kind of in unison, like everyone supports Kaepernick? Or is there a little bit dissension?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think for the most part the support is there, and obviously Elmani nor I speak on behalf of Kappa Alpha Psi in official capacity, but we are both long-time 25-year members of the organization and have broad networks within the group. And so there were 5,000 or more Kappas in Orlando about 2 weeks ago, and obviously this is a topic of discussion. And there are some brothers who are buying the jersey, supporting the jersey. There are some brothers who are talking about pulling out of NFL Network subscription cable, not attending games. There are other brothers who are honest to say, no matter what, I'm still going to go to a Steelers game. I'm still going to go to an Eagles game. So I think there is a broader reflection of society, but I think within Kappa specifically, because the organization was founded in 1911 in Indiana, on the campus of Indiana University, when looking at someone wrong could get you lynched or killed, and that group of men stood up for that. I think there's still a feeling on a historic level that Kappa wants to support Kaepernick in all that we can do as an organization, because that's what we're about, the promotion and the achievement and the encouragement of African American men.
Absolutely. And you're finding the same?
I'm finding the same. I think that there is that diversity. It's an interesting dynamic. It's, in terms of the diversity of it, because
it's age driven,
right? Age driven. Then you do have members of our organization that are in law enforcement that are still on different sides. I think that the common thing is, regardless of whether there's disagreement, I think across the board though there's support on the voice, and there's not a deniability about the issue, about what he's bringing voice to.
Absolutely.
So there's no denying that. You cannot. You have to have your head, Kappa or not,
head in the sand.
You have to have your head so far in the sand if you're going to deny that the issue in which he's kneeling for does not exist.
Absolutely.
And I always use the analogy of never let perfect be the enemy of good. Which is, just because Kaepernick might not be the perfect messenger and he hasn't done everything right, and he kind of made a mistake on the whole voting thing versus non-voting. Some Kappas really pulled back on that. But his message and what he is standing for and what he's trying to bring light to is so on point that to deny him that and to say, oh well, he did this, so I can't mess with him anymore is ridiculous.
You guys, I want to interrupt you at one point. Like, we talked about being the perfect messenger.
Yep.
And Mike Vick recently said that he's imperfect, and so maybe that's why he's not hired, because he has an afro. What is that?
Elmani, you want to touch on that? Because I don't even want to comment. Because
I really have absolutely no comment, because once again, if you're making that's the reason, then every member of the NFL that has any form of a record, gold teeth, I mean, anything that should not be hired, it's not that. I'm a history teacher by trade, right? And historically speaking, across the world, one of the most powerful, you can say, revolutions that people take is when they confront whatever that country's symbolism of power is.
Exactly.
Now, you would think the kneeling of Colin Kaepernick is, well, he's trying to be anti-American. Actually, it's quite the contrary.
It's to the contrary.
History has shown, not just here in America, throughout, that when you make a statement towards this symbol, it's to call that symbol, not the symbol into question, not the concept, because the concept of America and the American flag conceptually, which actually comes out of France, it is a very strong one. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all men will create equal, so forth and so on. But people oftentimes take stands to contradict, to call its people, its system and government, to say you're not upholding the standards in which you're promoting. So you can't on one hand say all men, women are created equal, even soldiers have fought for the rights of freedom, but then deny or put your head in the sand when, whether it be parts of law enforcement or other people are violating the rights of people. So you can't have it both ways.
Do you think today's political climate is contributing to the blackballing?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I was trying to think of whether it was or whether it's just more open, obvious about it.
Let me rewind and go back to the Afro piece once again. And, there's this saying about respectability politics, right? Which is pull your pants up to be respected. Don't wear gold teeth to be respected. Don't have a tattoo to be respected. Don't cut your afro to be respected.
Yeah.
So to play that game is kind of a losing scenario in and of itself. And so if the analogy I made in my article was if Colin Kaepernick was applying for a middle management bank job in Utah, then maybe he should cut his afro and take off his tattoos. But he's playing in the NFL where you wear a helmet. So that's a broader cultural statement. And then in regards to the political climate,
well, but I think Colin Kaepernick responded perfectly. He said that Mike Vick had Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
And that's when
that was a great tweet.
Right. And you start to embrace your you start to embrace your captors, your oppressors. That's what that means.
And he said it without saying it. He never mentioned Michael Vick in that tweet. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But everybody got exactly what he was talking about.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I do think the political climate has contributed to this discussion around Kaepernick, and it's why we're here today. There's this saying about President Trump giving people license, and giving people license to kind of voice their worst demons, and you see that over and over again now.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I have one more question. Should other black organizations support Colin Kaepernick? Because it seems to be pretty disparate. There are media, there are columnists, but it seems to be like, and then there are the Kappas, and you all don't speak for them, I know, but I understand that it seems fairly disparate. Is there one way to go to the NFL and make this point? How can that be done? You can do the boycotts, but how do you let them know that you are serious?
I think that I want to follow the lead of Delta Sigma Theta. And Delta Sigma Theta, when the former Attorney General was being held up, they went en masse to the Capitol. They sat behind her in the hearings. They made public statements on major networks. And I think, if it were up to me, and I could speak on behalf of the organization or the leadership, I would like to see that level of support from Kappa, but as well as other D9 organizations, because we do have to stand together when it comes to issues of promoting black identity, black positivity, and I think this is something that we should definitely surround ourselves around.
And I think this as well, and I hear the boycott, but I think this is an opportunity for not just our organization, but for all organizations in all communities to maybe hold the foot to the fire of the different NFL franchises to do more to invest in those communities, to provide more speaking platforms to their players to talk about this. And you know what? If you want to use your platform for good, do more than in your area, just like Colin's line brother did in Denver, to bring police and to bring the community together.
Create that dialogue.
Right. Because here's the one concern I got about the boycott is what happens to any movement or any voice the moment he is signed? Then does it all go away?
Oh, yeah.
And so my thing is, the issue to me, the issue is bigger than him getting signed when you talk about the broader movement. Yeah. And do we want to let any franchises off the hook and say, okay, it's done. Now, I'm not responsible for
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, Barack Obama is now president, so now we have no racial issues.
And
Oh, yeah.
unfortunately,
Same
that
analogy. Kaepernick plays in the
happen.
NFL,
Right.
so now NFL has no racial issues.
So I would
yeah.
prefer, beyond the boycott, I actually prefer people in their community saying, okay, we're going to go to this NFL franchise. We want you to do more in our community. There's a lot of organizations working together to try to bring law enforcement and community together. Okay, then be a positive force. Okay, but we can't let them off the hook simply if or when
Absolutely.
Colin gets signed.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Absolutely. And then there was a little bit of a buzz about the Ravens. Is that going to happen? Anybody?
That's
anywhere?
been nixed. So the Ravens basically were going to bring in a backup quarterback.
Hi, Ray Lewis.
Yeah, because Ray's a friend too, so that's tough.
Right.
So Ravens were going to bring in a backup quarterback, and then they went in a different direction with supposedly someone who has less talent, less experience, and less success than Colin Kaepernick.
From the Arena League.
Yeah. So,
Right.
I mean, and Colin Kaepernick is, once again, a quarterback that led the 49ers to the Super Bowl. That little small game that nobody watches. And he's still not getting the love or the respect that he needs relative to his talent base. So it's a sad state of affairs.
Do you think he could find success overseas?
I mean,
But here's the thing. I know we're talking about he needs to get signed. He needs to get signed. Everything I've seen from Colin, and I have not talked to him, is someone that's at peace with where he is.
He does seem at peace.
And so, once again, that's why I'm wondering if we should be moving on to the bigger thing. I'm not saying look, we know what that is, right? So nobody's going to forget that. Nobody's going to say, okay.
and they're not mutually exclusive.
They're
I
not
get what you're
mutually
saying,
exclusive.
yeah.
But at the same time, should we keep pressuring the NFL and other organizations about the bigger issue with what he was talking about? Because he's at peace. And once again, I'm concerned that the NFL will make a decision, or someone make a decision, you know what, sign him so we can get everybody off of our case.
Right.
Well, in a league that's almost, I guess, 80% African American.
Right.
To say that we can't talk about African American issues when
Correct.
that talent base drives the league and the culture, that's ludicrous. And so
That is
we have to have a voice
Right.
as players, but that voice comes from unity.
Exactly. I agree.
And what about the players' union? What can it do?
I think it's the same thing. I mean, the players' union has to kind of get on the same page in terms of coming up with, how they're going to support Kaepernick if they choose to support him, and then figure out, like I said, like Almani said, which is on a local level, how do you hold the individual franchises accountable to doing more in their community so that
Right.
you take the issue of Kaepernick being hired off the table and we become kind of broader advocates for the African American experience and positive stuff in our community.
Right.
Well, this is a hot story, and
Yeah, it is.
may not be going away anytime
No,
soon.
it's not.
And we are going to close with, let's keep the conversation moving in comments. But be sure to please check out, if you haven't already, check out Kwame's article on News One.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.